Hi, I'm First Selectman Mary Glassman, and I want to welcome you to Simsbury Happenings. With me today is Lisa Heavner. Lisa is on the Board of Selectmen for the last almost 6 years. She's a 3-term, hard-working selectman. We're going to hear a little bit about her hard work and some of the updates on what's going on in town. And she does a great job bringing her expertise as an attorney and as a mom to the Board of Selectmen. So Lisa, it's great to see you.
Nice to be back, Mary.
Yeah, it's also want to thank SCTV for giving us the opportunity today to just spend a few minutes and tell you what's happening in your town. So Lisa, let's get right to work. Folks have been coming into Town Hall this summer, paying their tax bill, and they're in very good spirits this year.
And why is that, Mary?
Why is that? Maybe you could
I'm happy
share.
to say it's the first time we've lowered taxes in as long as we can date back, and we've only been able to go back 40 years. So it's the first time anyone has lowered taxes in at least 40 years.
That's really incredible because since you've been on the board, we've been able to reduce the Board of Selectmen budget and also keep one of the smallest increases in the Board of Selectmen budget in the history of the town. But you're right, this year, for the first time, we actually decreased people's property taxes in town, and that's pretty significant. And we did actually try to go back during the budget process, as you recall, try to find out when the last time Simsbury actually lowered taxes, and we couldn't find anything in our records, so that's tremendous. So maybe it might be helpful to our residents to hear what made this year different, given the fact that the Board of Selectmen budgets have come in low. What makes this year different than other years? Are we able to do that?
Well, there's a couple things that come into play. Your taxes are impacted not only by our budget. Actually, most people don't realize it, but our budget is one of the smallest budgets that affects your taxes. Counts for about 2% of our $2 out of $10
Right.
go towards the town. The bulk of your taxes are determined by the Board of Ed. And then bonding money that we use for capital projects, and then a tiny little bit for the fire district.
Right.
So there are 4 things that come into play. So no matter what we do to our budget, although we've been, I think, done a phenomenal job under your leadership coming in with budgets that are essentially what they were in 2008, that impact is actually smaller than you might think.
So it's just a Board of Selectmen budget decrease is not enough
That's
to lower
right.
your overall taxes.
So the way we were able to do it is a couple of things. One, Mary, you worked very closely with the Board of Ed and came up with some healthcare savings that enabled us to decrease costs significantly. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Exactly, and Lisa, thank you for serving as the Board of Selectmen liaison. I know you never miss a Board of Education meeting, and having that relationship with the Board of Ed, with the superintendent, Matt Curtis, and with the Board of Ed, I think has really fostered collaboration within our town. And several years ago, as you remember, on the Board of Selectmen, we started looking at joint savings opportunities with the Board of Ed on health insurance. And what we found is that there were a lot of different health insurance plans that were offered both to town employees and to Board of Ed employees. And through cooperation with the Board of Ed and with town employees and Board of Ed employees, we were able to go out to bid on one carrier. And it was shocking. We knew there would be savings, but it was shocking when we found out that the savings were in excess of $500,000 to the town.
That's
and
right.
I think that was a big plus in helping us lower taxes.
That's absolutely right. And then another thing that happened is, and kudos to the Board of Ed, they came in with one of their smallest increases that they've had in years. So they looked to consolidate, and they were able to do that in part because they're seeing decreasing enrollment. So they responded to that decrease in enrollment with an appropriate budget. Another thing that impacts your taxes is revenue, on the revenue side.
Right.
And a couple of things happened there. Thanks to John Hampton and Kevin Wickos, who brought home money to Simsbury through educational cost sharing and grant money, because that enabled us to have money on hand that we didn't need to pass on to the taxpayer.
Exactly.
So grant money is crucial.
It is.
And that counts for about 5% of the Board of Ed's budget, or $5 million of the Board of Ed's budget. So it's significant to them.
Yes.
And they were able to maintain that and increase it a little bit on school security. Another thing that happened is, and this again is under your leadership, we've done a lot of planning over the last more than half a decade now at this
Yes.
point. And that's enabled us to see for the first time in years, we're seeing more growth, more projects than we've seen in, I think our engineer said, in 20 years.
And that's really interesting because I think when taxpayers get their tax bill, we obviously tend to look at the expense side of the budget.
That's right.
And we do a great job of controlling the expense side, I think, through the cooperative efforts with the town and with our state revenue. But bringing additional revenue in that's not from our taxpayers has had a significant impact. And I think people may not know that we have the highest number of building permits issued, and we brought in about $250,000 more this year in building permit fees than we had in any number of years. And that's, I think, really a tribute to, as you said, long-range planning, some of the studies that we've done, the streamlining of the regulatory process, our partnering with the Hartford and getting some good publicity on some of our awards, such as safe, one of the top safe communities, one of the best places to live, bike friendly, all of those. While it's nice for us to live here in a community that's recognized, they also go a long way in promoting the town and marketing the town.
And that's one thing we found out when we met with real estate agents, is that they use these awards when they say, why should you live, why should you move your business to Simsbury? They point to these awards, and they're real sellers for the town, so they're not just lovely trophies, although they are lovely trophies, yes. But they bring in business and residents. And credit to you on the bike-friendly
Thank you.
Initiative, because that is more than just a wellness initiative. It's also a tourist initiative and an economic driver. We're seeing companies come in and want to locate their businesses by the trail now because they view it as an asset.
Exactly. And I think it's a great way to engage our residents in our community. I mean, certainly the town received the Bike Friendly Award, and we've just applied for the silver designation, which no one in Connecticut has received. We were the first in Connecticut, and it's because we have such a great group of volunteers who work on that committee, and that's led by Patty Jacobus and Diana Moody and Larry Leonis. So it's a great core
Steve Mitchell,
group, and
right.
Steve Mitchell started the program, so thank you for reminding me on that. But so that goes a long way, and I think it's also important that our residents know that we're going to keep going after these designations and keep going after those grants and keep marketing the town and promoting economic development, so we can keep passing along those tax savings to our residents.
And there was something else that happened this year, which has never happened before, and that's with the Board of Finance. People think that you and I and our board sets the mill rate, but
Yes.
we actually do not. And the mill rate is determined by a number of things. It's determined by the budgets, it's determined by the revenue,
Yes.
and it's also determined by the collection rate. And that's kind of a complicated thing to get a handle on, but basically what it is, the Board of Finance estimates how many people are going to actually pay their taxes.
Right.
And they have in the past underestimated that, so that when more taxes came in, they had a reserve. And that's enabled us to have a reserve. I think we're up to 10 to 12% in reserve now, is that right?
Yes, and I think it's the Board of Finance has been key to work with us, and I think the addition of Linda Schofield on the Board of Finance
That's right.
Has been very helpful to us on the town side, bringing her expertise as a state rep, bringing her analysis in. I think the Board of Finance this year now is one of the discussions that Linda led was the collection rate, looking at it, because we always, I think the Board of Finance always underestimated the collection rate,
That's right.
which artificially raised taxes.
That's right.
Because they always said, well, we're going to collect less than we actually do, even though we always collect more. And I think Linda's conversation and input into taking a look and examining those policies was another factor in helping us keep taxes low.
That's right. And so all those came together and enabled us, because we did work so closely with the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and our board,
Yes.
we were able to work together for the town and come in, I'll just say it again because we're so proud of it, the first tax decrease that we can find.
Absolutely. I think it's key. And I think it's a credit to the conversations that we're having on long-term planning. One of the new conversations we're having, and thanks for your support, was the Open Space Fund that we're now looking at. We're looking at creating a gift policy, allowing people to donate to maintain our open space. We're looking at selling off land that we may not value or may not feel is a priority for the town, and purchasing or maintaining other land that fits more with our vision. And we just had some exciting news
We did.
on that front, so
We did.
maybe you want to share that, Lisa.
At our last Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday, we went into executive session to decide whether or not to purchase the property at 1 Old Bridge, which is the Betty Hudson house located next to the Flower Bridge.
Yes.
And we voted at that point to the Board of Selectmen to purchase that property. And the reason why that's significant is multifold. First of
Yes.
all, it's on a flood zone, and there's a strong public policy to removing houses and residences that are located entirely in the flood zone, which this is. But the other opportunity it gives us is access to a beautiful river view.
Yes.
And one of the things that we learned from our marketing study, again, because of our planning, is that it's important for the town to enhance and build up on river access points. So this allows us to follow the marketing plan's recommendation that we highlight the river.
It's actually very interesting that the most popular access point, which is on Riverside Road,
That's
is
right.
not owned by the town.
That's right.
You know, people might be surprised to hear that. The only access the town has for putting in canoes and kayaks is really by the Pincho sycamore tree. So while we have a lot of places that people like to get into the river and enjoy the amenities of the river, fishing and kayaking and canoeing, we really only have one safe place for them to get in. That's town controlled. So I think it was a great decision for the town. I'm glad that you supported that, and the Board of Selectmen supported that. But I think what people may not realize is that will also now allow us to control the entire area by the Flower Bridge.
That's right.
And I think that had it been sold to a private developer and a new home renovated or possibly built there, would limit what the town's future ability to use the access to the river would be. So I think it's very visionary. It's funny because people may not realize that 20 years ago, the town did not own any of the land in the center of town.
That's right.
Where Simsbury, the Performing Arts Center is, where the soccer fields are, where the trail is on that side of the riverside. The town 20 years ago said, oh my goodness, here's all this wonderful land in the center of town. And I was fortunate enough to be in office at the time, and we had a great group of stewards, including Helen Peterson, a longtime Simsbury resident who was on the Planning Commission for many years. And with our long-term study, we also looked at that time at what we want the future of Simsbury Center to be.
Right.
And one of the recommendations was, well, if you want to control the center of Simsbury, then you need to buy it. So I think the Betty Hudson parcel, the 1 Old Bridge parcel, is in keeping with that policy of looking visionary.
Absolutely. And also one of the things we saw when the Tourism Committee participated in the competition at the state level for one of the best towns in Connecticut was that one of the main attractions to Simsbury that people know about and that they come to for is the Flower Bridge.
Yes.
So this will enhance a tourist attraction that is already bringing people into town.
Exactly.
And so it's also an economic driver.
And it's going to be interesting to have a conversation with our residents about now what do we want to use that property long term. Initially, are we just going to use it as a place to launch canoes, kayaks? And I think we need to have that conversation. Do we want to keep it open space? Do we want to structure there? And one of the things that I think you hit on that was really significant is by the town purchasing that property, we're also, that house floods all the time. It's in 20-year floodplain. 100% of it is floods. And it wasn't that long ago, last year, that we were rescuing folks who lived on Riverside Road in boats to get them out of, that area. So not having people live in a floodplain, keeping people safe, not putting our volunteers and our public safety personnel in harm's way is another significant factor.
And one of the interesting things during this whole process, I believe it was you who received a letter from a resident who told us that area of Betty's house was once used as a canoe club.
Yes.
So it's bringing it back to its roots.
Yeah, very exciting. And Lisa, you chair Public Safety Subcommittee, and thank you for doing that. And maybe our residents don't know that when we're talking about flooding and emergency disasters, that we actually have a committee that focuses completely on preparing the town, preparing our residents for for disasters and keeping people safe. So it's not too early. It's September, and it's not too early to start talking about emergency response. So maybe you can share a little bit about what your committee does.
Sure. Well, first I'll start with a reminder to folks. If you have not already, you can go to our town website, which is www.simsbury-ct.gov, and click on Community Alerts tab. It's on the upper left-hand corner. It's a green tab. And then go from there, and you want to sign up for 3 separate alerts. And you have to sign up for each one separately. If you sign up for one, you don't get the other 2.
So what's the difference? What's the 3 for?
Well, the first one is for Simsbury Community Alerts, and those are alerts that are local, that come from us. So an emergency,
Simsbury
closing of
Police
a road,
Department.
police department, shelter in place.
Right.
If there is an emergency or something, gas leak, you would get a call or a text or an email, depending on what you sign up for. The second thing they ask you to sign up for is CT alert, and that is a statewide alert. If there's a statewide crisis like a hurricane or an imminent storm, you would get your emergency alerts there. And then the last thing you can sign up for is town news and announcements, and that's really the first place you're going to go to. That's where we put out our information about storm preparation. And after as we all, to the extent we were able to get messages during the October storm a few years ago, that's where we send out updates about shelter and where you can get information. So daily updates in the midst of a crisis are sent out through town news and announcements. So there are 3 things you need to sign up for, and you need to sign up for them separately.
And that's really helpful because as we saw during the last storms when we were spending all of our time in the Emergency Operations Center in Town Hall, the more information we can get to our residents in preparation for the storm, the safer residents will be. So those alerts, I think, are very helpful in warning people there's a weather event or there's some natural disaster coming down the pike, and reminding folks what you need to do to prepare. Shelter in place, make sure you have enough water, make sure your prescriptions are filled. That was one of the things that we dealt a lot with during the storm, is that we didn't realize that the power would be out for so long, and folks ran out of prescriptions that they needed. So a lot of those things, to the extent that you can take care of those before the disaster, the safer that you'll be.
Right. One of the things we pushed out was gas, cash, and water, because we ran out of gas, as you recall, because the pumps didn't work.
Right.
Cash, because a lot of the ATM machines don't work, and water. When I say water, I also mean food, water, and medicine.
Yes. So it's very helpful.
Yeah. So, and the other thing we're doing for storm preparation is we're looking into our generator situation.
Yes.
Because if the power goes out, again, we want to be prepared. And one of the things we looked at is the needs at the high school. When we had the last power outage, what we discovered was that the refrigerators and freezers were not on the generator.
Right.
So, although we were able to accommodate that through creativity and sharing and partnerships with our local businesses, we did want to get that updated. So we're looking at that. The other thing we're looking at is adding a generator to Terrafil, which would be an alternate site if for some reason the river gets blocked and there's no access. But that would, just to lay out the expectations, that would only be open as a secondary consideration if something happened at the high school, or we couldn't access it.
I think it's a credit to your committee, and I really am grateful. Thank you for spending all of your time on preparing our residents for disasters. It's important that everybody be organized and that the staff knows what their roles are, and that we as elected officials are prepared to step in, and you've done a great job doing that. The money for the generators, I think it also is a credit to our staff. We were able to get a grant for the partially for the Terrafil generator. And I think that's because it was recognized that there was such a difficulty getting some residents from Terrafil across the river. We couldn't cross the river for at least a day, and so that presents all kinds of public emergency response issues. So credit to you and all your hard work.
Well,
That's
thank you,
terrific.
Mary. And you've also, been leading the effort just in Town Hall. People may not realize it, but all department head staffs and you yourself have to go through National Incident Management System training, NIMS training. And I've done it as well.
Yes.
But and a lot of your, not even department heads, but a lot of people, I think the entire group of Public Works has gone through it, with the water pollution control, the police go through it.
And that's really helpful. And our residents may not know. We just, we review and we train and we prepare so that when a disaster does happen, we know exactly whose role it is to do what, and we have the tools that we need in terms of emergency operations center that's equipped with phones and radios and maps, and our job is to keep people safe in an emergency, and we take that very seriously. And there's a lot of work that's going into making sure that exactly happens. So,
and the reason why it's so important, it's a national program, and during an emergency, locals, different municipalities sometimes use acronyms, but what one acronym is used in one community might mean something else in another. So it's developing a national language.
And it was so helpful. During the storm, there were so many things happening all the time, and everyone, there were roads to clear, there was power outages to track which streets were open, which streets didn't have power, how are our most vulnerable residents being taken care of through social services. And again, thanks for creating that buddy system where folks can call the senior center and get on a list of either asking someone to call an emergency or reaching out and calling someone else in an emergency. And that's very helpful. Neighbors helping neighbors really goes a long way during an emergency when many of the emergency responders might be busy.
Right. So that was a great initiative, and we're pleased with how that's going.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else we've been doing.
You have another initiative that's similar, and that's the Community for Care. And that also goes back to the mission of taking care of people. So maybe, I think that would be really important for people to know what is Community for Care and what resources are available. So maybe you can share
Sure.
that.
Community for Care is sort of a joint town, school, and community committee. It was created by the Board of Selectmen. And its mission is to communicate, educate, and inform, and problem solve on issues of substance abuse, drug abuse, tobacco, alcohol, and also mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And the idea that the reason why we formed it is a lot of it almost initiated from the school system, where they found out that parents were reluctant to contact the school if their child was in crisis because they didn't want the stigma associated. But they didn't. But parents didn't know where else to turn. And Woody Edens, who's the co-chair of the committee with me, brought it to you initially, to you and me, and at that time Dr. Ullman, and now Matt Curtis. Mm-hmm. And what he said is, look, I'm getting all these questions. Where do I go? What do I do? And he said it's not just a school issue, and in fact, a lot of drug use occurs after school hours, not in the schools, but in the homes, or when children aren't supervised. And Woody, unfortunately, officiated over a few overdoses. Ceremonies over that. So he was growing concerned that this was a community issue. And, and we're seeing it not only among children, but among adults and even grandparents. So we wanted to make sure that we united together and said, this isn't just a school issue. This isn't just a town issue. This isn't just a church or a synagogue issue. This is our issue. It's a community issue.
And I think, Lisa, again, you're opening up the communication, and our close work with the Board of Ed. It has to be a multi-faceted approach.
That's right.
Because we have to look out for each other, whether you're in school, whether you're at home, whether you're elderly. We have to come together as a community and find those places and those people that need help, because help is available.
Right.
And I think what you've done is a tremendous resource if folks aren't aware of it.
Right. One of the things we put together, and again, thanks to Woody and Mickey, who really led this charge. Mickey is our Director of Social Services, who is also on the committee. We have the police. We have members of the school administration are on it. Cheryl Cook from the board is also on it with me. But what this book is, a parent's guide for the prevention of alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. And this is given out to all parents at the open houses at the high school and the middle school. And what this does is provide resources to parents who aren't sure what to do and how to talk to their children about education. It has stuff like the adolescent brain, addiction and other drugs, healthy brains, negative effects of substance abuse, and legal consequences. Because people don't know what are the legal consequences for using drugs, and they list them state by state. But really the most important thing in this book is we put together local resources. So a parent or any member of the community who is looking for help but is reluctant to either call the director of social services or to call the school to ask, we list who you call when you're in crisis.
And I think that's so valuable because all of these resources are available anonymously.
Right.
And if you know who to call, and if you feel that you can talk to someone confidentially without having to give your name or to give other private information, you might be able to be connected to a resource that could really make the difference. So
That's right.
it's a credit to you and to the committee for putting together that wonderful resource. There's lots of information that's free. Town of Simsbury does a great job, and Lisa, you do a great job in getting information out that is available. So folks, if you have any need, let us know, and there's a program and a service out there to help you.
And these books are also available in the First Selectman's office, the library, social services, the police department, and at the high school and middle school main offices. So if you want a copy, they're there for the taking, and we're pleased to do it. I just want to mention and give thanks to the members of the community. Almost all of them have some training in this area in either mental health or personal experience that they've dealt with, or the medical field. So it's a tremendous group of resources out there.
Okay. Well, thanks, Lisa. And this is our time to say thank you for watching Simsbury Happenings. As you heard Selectman Heavner and I talk today, there's a lot of wonderful things happening in our community. There's a lot of resources and information available to you that we didn't have enough time to even talk about today. So we look forward to hearing from you. We'd like you to get involved. Special thanks again to SCTV for giving us the opportunity to talk with you, and thank you for joining us.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.